So here's the old 188. I'm back from helping my mom. And I started by putting in little bits of radio. Those are just square pieces of plastic, cut or rectangular. And they're based on some pictures I've seen. I also put an ammunition case back there. I started with the flooring, adding things, little pads for a bombardier, I guess. And there'll be some more things to add on either side. Um, Extra fold down seats, things like that. But I'm trying to also use parts from the kit. I think the yoke is actually really nice. That's going to go right there on top of that little piece of extension that I added to that floor. And all these pieces are just pieces of plastic that are glued in, cut and glued to shape. Now, something you can do is you have these little 1/72nd scale dudes, and I take them and I use them to place things. So you can sit there and you can put them on seats and things to find out where rudder pedals go, if things look good proportionally, etc. So that's all really important to try. So I use those little guys all the time. And there's just the bottom half of somebody. So I can see where the seat's going to go for the radio and gunner back there, things like that. And I make a mark where I'm going to put a seat. And that's where the main seat's going to go. And again, I'm going to start to try to use some of that's part of an instrument panel that goes up front, right on the side, right there. That's kind of angled, and that's going to have some instruments on it, or at least one or two. It's going to sit like that. But I'm just looking at pictures of the airplane and trying to sort of get a general idea. None of this is 100% accurate. But when it's done and dry brushed and detail painted and everything, it look really cool. And you'll be able to see it because that canopy is going to be clear and thin when I vac form it and all the rest. Now, on the side, there is a shelf. So what I did was took some very thin plastic and I kind of scored it and bent it. And then I'm just setting it in place so it's at a right angle. It's like a piece of iron that's at a right angle, and then that goes ahead and fits right there. I added one more piece up front because I messed up. I needed it to be longer. So these little, like, if you look at them on end, they're little L's, and that gives us a shelf, and that's where a lot of lots of things like little bits of levers and things go. Now this piece is a little bit short. It's not tall enough. So what I did was I added a little bit to it so that it would touch the floor on the other side, on the bottom. So I add a little bit of glue, and then I go ahead and grab that piece of plastic and put it on there. All I did was make it this way it's longer. And so once I put it in there, it'll touch the floor because I didn't do it right. The floors aren't exactly perfect, and so I had to sort of do some manipulation here. But it fits pretty well, and once it's in there, just put a dot of glue in there, and it'll glue in place really nice. And now, because there's a step, I have to cut a tiny notch out of that to make it fit and make it look a little more flush. So I cut the little notch out, and now that piece will fit right up against the other little console, right up like that. So I slide it up there. Looks pretty good. Sitting okay. Looks even. And then I'm just going to put a little dot of glue. And that liquid glue is really nice because it's just a little dot and it runs all into all the cracks and, immediately starts to glue it in place. So that's a good start. And then I take my little piece of the console and that goes up against that end. And just very carefully place it. Again, a little shot of glue is all you need. Just to let the capillary action, or the capillary action, as our friends in the UK would say, and just let it sit. And making sure everything is straight and true. It looks okay. And there's going to be all kinds of little, like I said, levers and stuff that go on there. But that's the beginning of this interior. And looking pretty good. As you place things, you then know where to put other things. There's going to be a lot more things that go in here, but this is just an initial stab in the dark here. So now I'm adding the yoke. Add a little bit of glue. I should have probably drilled a hole or something, but this works. I can go ahead and put this right down. And to me, The yoke looks really cool. It's to me it's well molded, and I'd like to use as much of the airplane as I can. Um, and so I go ahead and put this on, and maybe the components are a little thick, but I don't know. I think they're going to look pretty good. I'm going to say it's a beefy Germanic control yoke. But it looks kind of nice. It's got nice ridges on it and stuff. So to me, it's going to look neat, especially when it's dry brushed and stuff. I have some detail cut out on it, picked out on it. Now, looking at pictures, there's some kind of a little structure that fits between the gunner radio operator seat and the pilot. And so this is just to show you how I made this is exactly the same way I made all of the radio parts. I square off the pieces with my file or my sandpaper, and I basically measure it out either by eyeball or carefully measuring it. Usually it's by eyeball. I know about how thick it's supposed to be, how long it's supposed to be. I put my little blade there. And then I take the last part, sort of the thicker part of the blade, and I just start making a little bit of a ridge. And I just carefully cut. You want to cut straight down if you possibly can, because you don't want it to, of course, be all crooked. But if it is, you can shore it up with a little bit of sandpaper. Not a big deal. Here I needed to shore it up with a little bit of sandpaper, and that's just fine. This is not a race, and it's not difficult to do. And this piece is just going to go, and I'm going to add a little bit more to it, but it's just something. I'm not exactly sure what it is. It might be part of where maybe a step or something where the top turret gunner goes up there. I'm going to have to build a gunner seat for him as well in a little bit here. But what you do with these scratch-built cockpits is you just slowly add little bits at a time. It's fun to do. It's more satisfying than a resin interior that you can buy, which is probably pretty accurate and everything. But when you do it this way, you get to learn what the parts were and where they went and what makes sense. And again, mine's not as probably fidelity-wise perfect, but I don't know. Scratch building cockpits is fun. So here I'm trying to use these seats. Now this is where I'm still going to see what I can do with this seat, but ultimately, spoiler alert, it looks really dumb when I'm finished. Because these seats themselves don't look anything like the real seat. But again, can I use it as a placeholder? Can I use it as a starting point? So my plan was on the sides of these, they're kind of more like fishbowl shaped in the real airplane, it looks like, with a big kind of fishbowl round iron or steel plate around the pilot's head. And you can see, for instance, that if there was a head on this plastic pilot, that has to be up higher. Because look at that. That's just his shoulders. So the little armor plate needs to be higher. So I got to scratch build that. But can I use this as a starting point? So I set it in here and look at it, and it looks very toy-like. And I decided, why couldn't I try to build the real seat, a little one that looks a little bit more realistic, starting with this as a starting point, as a guide. So what I tried to do then was the edges have on them, there's a thin piece of plastic I use as the armor plate that kind of snuggles around, almost like kidney armor around the pilot. And so you can see that piece of white down there. I've cut that, and that's going to fit right along the back side and the edge of the seat that's in the kit. So I've made two of them, and I just put a little bit of glue on here, and then I put these pieces on either side. And problem is, my shape is not right. When I look at this, I'm trying to get it figured out. It's got to be curved. It's not curved. So I'm going to have to probably take these out and just build them from scratch. But I'm trying something here to see if it works. I then put on the other one, and by the time I get to this point, I'm realizing this is not probably going to fly. But in the interest of trying to see if it's even and how it looks inside the interior, it's like, why not? I end up cutting off the top pieces, and I'm going to have to put on, like I said, the armor plate for the pilot's head. But this was just an idea that isn't really going to work. So I'm going to probably try to build a seat from scratch out of, lo and behold, paper. I might be able to curve it and make it look really good or better than this. And again, like every once in a while, grab your cadavers here and set them down and see, are they generally in the right position? Yeah, generally. It's a little bit thin. It needs to be a little bit wider, get a little more girth on them. And that's where I decided, the seat's probably not going to work. But just in case, why not set it in so that you can see what it's going to look like? But you can see there's the yoke that's drying in place. Even if all I've got is a couple little pieces of square plastic, but it already is starting to look better, certainly than the cavernous pit that was there before. So, again, it's a nice start, needs more work. We'll do this in installments, but the key is to slowly and steadily, focus on one little thing and just put it in. And as you do it, you can then locate other pieces, and you'll be surprised how cool your scratch-built interior looks. And even better, you'll know that you did it yourself. So stay tuned. We'll keep plugging away.